Good morning, everybody. Happy homecoming. It's really great to see you here. We have nearly 3,500 alumni and community members with us this weekend. We had an awesome parade with our Grand Marshal, Cord Jefferson, leading the way. That was really fun. I'm going to ask him in a little while what was his favorite float. I have a thought about what the answer is going to be, but you're all going to be there to cheer on the tribe today, that's right? Yeah. All right, that's great. I hope you're having a chance to connect with classmates in your reunions. There's going to be a fantastic bash tonight, so make sure you get a nap so that you can stay up late. I'm going to kick us off here by saying a few words about the Year of the Arts at William & Mary. I think many of you know that we are in our encore semester of a 3-semester Year of the Arts. It's been really powerful to get a broad sense of how vibrant and cutting edge our arts programs are and our student arts groups. If there's students here in an arts group, I'm looking back, it's hard to see who's here. I see mostly alums, but let me just ask, are there alums and or students here who were involved in the arts at William & Mary? Yeah, oh, lots of hands, fantastic. It's been extraordinarily fun. You know that we've opened a new arts quarter, genuinely multiple buildings a quarter. The Muscarelli Museum is about to open. We're concluding an extraordinary expansion of that museum. We have our music building, we have our performing arts building right there along Jamestown Road. I always want to stress something extraordinary about those buildings, that they are the result of investment from the Commonwealth of Virginia. I don't know any other state in the country that puts 120, 130 million into the arts right now, but Virginia has done that at William & Mary, and we're incredibly grateful. I suspect there are people in this room who have helped support philanthropically the expansion of the Muscarelli, so thank you for that as well. It's really quite extraordinary. Here's why I see arts as so important as part of a liberal arts and sciences education right now. You know that William & Mary is the first university in the country to have collected art for the purposes of teaching. We have a great emphasis on material arts, visual arts, moving image arts, so film as well. You can study that here. Performing arts, absolutely. I'm a theater person, so I feel really closely connected to that part of the world. Several things the arts have in common, the practice of art has in common with entrepreneurship and with athletics. The first thing is, as an artist, as a maker, you are always thinking about what is the impact of what you do on others, whatever the form or medium you work in. And if you are somebody who's really dedicated to that practice, you are constant in your self-assessment and your assessment of impact. There's a wonderful word I learned in the theater, the verb adjust. In the theater, when you're working with a director on a scene, you are continually thinking about what's the adjustment to make. How do we time these lines so that the laugh is stronger? How do we move an audience to grief or to self-reflection at this moment? Let's make an adjustment to make that happen. Just like what you do on the football field, where you're thinking about the timing of this pass, the sharpness of that route that you're cutting, that idea of non-judgmental assessment of the quality and impact of what you are making or doing is an incredibly powerful thing in every profession, as a citizen and as a professional in this world. It's what you practice as a maker. It's what you practice as an athlete. It's what you practice as an entrepreneur. And that work is also collective. You're always thinking, even if you are a solo artist, you are thinking about others, those who come in to engage the work that you've made with you. If you are in a collective practice like the theater, you're doing that with many, many other people, like in the back of this room, all our audio folks, the folks who are bringing up and setting down the lights, the folks who set up the chairs, the folks who do video, are incredible videographers. It is collective work, and the more powerful, because you understand the diversity of expertise and skill that goes into that collective work. So it's been an incredible delight to be celebrating the arts at William & Mary, and thank you for being here and being the advocates for that. Now, our Grand Marshal, Cord Jefferson, shows us what an extraordinary impact a working artist can have in the world. He's known for his incredibly wry and witty storytelling and directing. He launched his career in journalism. That's where he went right after William & Mary. And if we get him talking about that, when we get to Q&A, he's got some very interesting things to say about the disciplines that you learn as a journalist. He moved to LA to write for hit TV shows. So just wave if you know these shows. Succession, The Good Place. Oh, not enough Good Place watchers there. If you have not watched it, you must. My favorite show, yes, up in the room, back there. Master of None, Watchmen, extraordinary work. Okay, Cord, I know you're back there, lots of hands up here. He uses humor to delve deep into thinking about what makes human beings human, what makes communities knit together or break apart. His big screen debut, American Fiction, won enthusiastic acclaim in audiences and critics across the country. How many of you have seen it? Oh yeah, okay, good. Good, because if you haven't, there are gonna be spoilers, I'm just saying. I heard his talk back with students was a great success last night. We screened the film last night. It's a film that swept the awards for Best Adapted Screenplay, BAFTA Critics' Choice Award, Writers Guild of America, and William & Mary's first Oscar win. Yes. Cord graduated from William & Mary in 2004. It's in part because of his extraordinary success that I'm starting to say that William & Mary is the cradle of coaches and comedians. Yes, you can repeat that. Hey, happy 20th class of 2004. Well done. Great to have you back. And we are thrilled to have him here, so please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here.
It's a real honor. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for coming at 9:15 in the morning. I guess it's 10 now, but I woke up at 9:15.
It's still really early. But they had their naps yesterday.
Okay, fair.
Absolutely. I want to spend some time getting a little technical with you about your process and what draws you to projects.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask to sort of think more, you to be a little philosophical or expansive about the path that you've been on.
Okay.
What about a project becomes you? Can you say what you're thinking, yeah, that's a thing I want to sink my mind into?
I had remembered reading about erasure in a magazine a couple weeks prior, and I picked up Erasure just for something to read over the holidays. And within 15 or 20 pages, I said, like, I think that there's something here. There's spark. It's like, you know how it was like the book was like magnetic. Like it was like I'm a pretty slow reader. I'm a pretty slow writer and a pretty slow reader. But I read that book in about 5 days, which is fast for me. And because it was like one of these things that I just kept drifting back to every time I would sort of like finish a meal, I would like wonder, what am I going to do now? And I would just drift back to the book. And within about 50 pages, I wrote to my manager. And I said, I think I found the next project that I want to work on. And it was American Fiction. But I wrote it on spec, which means that I just wrote it without anybody. There was nobody paying for me to write it.
Yep.
So when you write something on spec, it's just like you write it. It's like a wish. You're putting a dream into the world. Truly, it's
Yes.
like I want to see this thing exist in the world, but it may never go anywhere. And
Yes.
so I just wrote it on spec because I loved it and I wanted to see it happen. But I did it all while I was also working on TV stuff too, which is and I wasn't. You got to do double. One of the things in the industry also is that you always have to have. 7 to 10 irons in the fire.
Yep.
Because so many of them
Okay.
die somewhere along the way. And so I'm constantly writing 6 or 7 scripts at once, just in the hopes that, one of them will go somewhere, just because it is, the failure rate is so high in the industry.
Well, I'm so glad that one grabbed you,
Yeah.
and it's so clear that it is yours in a
Thanks.
really compelling way. And maybe that's the flip side of no one else in the writer's room. Can you give us just a really quick snapshot of what a writer's room is? What's actually happening in it? What furniture is there?
Yeah.
If I were filming it, what would I see?
Yeah.
Is it really boring, or is it really fun, or?
It would probably be very boring to watch, like to be an outsider watching, but it's not. But when you're in it, it looks very boring, right? You're just sitting around. It's either, the furniture changes. There's varied. Some places are much more comfortable than other places. I'll say that. But you're generally just sitting around in a circle, and at first you do what's called breaking the season. So it's anywhere from actually I've been in rooms of 5 people to 15 people. It's larger for comedies because comedy is harder to write, in my opinion. And so you sit around and you break the season, which means is you sort of decide in broad brushstrokes where the season is going to go. Where do we start?
Okay.
Where's the middle? Where do we end? And generally, the showrunner is generally the person. Well, not generally. It's the person who runs the room. Oftentimes, it's the person who created the show.
All right.
And so the showrunner generally comes in with a rough idea of what they want out of the season. And so then, as a team, you help plan, sort of you fill in the blanks. You say okay, well, here's what needs to happen in episode 1 if we want to get to this place by episode 5, episode 2, and once you have that loose general structure, then you start breaking episode by episode. So then you go, okay, what happens beat by beat in the first episode? What happens beat by beat in the second episode? And then once you have that, then a writer goes away and writes episode 1 while the rest of the team is working on episode 2.
Got it.
And then sort of you come back with your first draft, and then the showrunner rewrites the draft in there, and however they want to rewrite the draft. And some are page 1 rewrites because they just have a totally different vision from what you had. But generally, it shouldn't be totally rewritten because you should have had that rough outline.
So there's a big whiteboard,
Yeah.
and you
Oh,
mapped
God.
it all out, or
Oh,
there's
God,
a
yeah,
Google
constant.
Doc,
Well,
or
it's generally cards.
Okay.
No cards. 3
Stuck
by 5 cards.
up on the wall.
3 by 5 cards are just a rough
Right.
beat. Here's what happens. Then this is what happens. Then this is what happens. Then this is what happens. And then you give it to the group, and the group may help rewrite it, especially in comedy. That's why comedy rooms are so big, is because oftentimes you have 12 people around a table going sentence by sentence and pitching new jokes, new lines, funnier things. It doesn't happen so much where you rewrite it as a room in a drama, just because that's not necessary in a drama. But I always think that comedy is harder to write, and you need more people because a good comedy has to have everything that a good drama has to have. It has to have compelling characters. It has to have an interesting story arc, but it also has to be funny. With drama's a little easy because it's easy to make people feel sad. You can just say this is, it's easy. It's easy to build tension. It's easy to sort of make people feel sad, but to sort of elicit laughter is a much hard. I think it's a harder job, and I think that it does require more people.
I wanted you to describe that in part because I think most of us think of writing as a solo activity, and you're describing a team sport.
Yeah.
Very, very much so, which is fascinating and fun.
Yeah.
I think more fun doing it in a team maybe than
totally
solo.
agree.
But let me go technical in a different way. I'm interested in I want to talk about a specific scene that I'm kind of obsessed by.
Yeah.
Because I wrote to you about it in American Fiction. I think of it as the Caesar salad scene, but it's really also a face-off scene. And if I understand correctly, this is your scene, not Percival Everett's scene.
No, it wasn't in the
where
book.
Monk and Centaura face off about what is the nature of really, truly, truly black fiction. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things I love about that scene. I particularly appreciate how many times we are invited to affiliate with somebody's position, and then that is undermined, and a different position is offered as a thing to affiliate with, and that is undermined, and that just keeps cycling and cycling.
Yeah.
For me, there are moments where, so first of all, Caesar salad, whose idea was that?
Mine, yeah.
Okay, so
I wanted it to be a
right.
really noisy, annoying salad.
It is so annoying. And as you said, Centaura is just like, Issa Rae is just,
Yeah, exactly.
with her chopsticks and the sushi, very delicate and elegant.
Yeah.
And Monk is just so obnoxious.
Yeah, exactly.
She asks him, has he read the book? And he says, no, but I've read excerpts and reviews.
Yeah, exactly.
He's such a snob.
Very arrogant.
And of course, it's Caesar salad
Yeah.
because he's a classicist.
See, that's.
Oh, you didn't get that?
I did not get that.
Obviously. Obviously.
I mean, yes, I thought of that. I'm a genius. That was all planned.
So can you talk about how you built that scene? First of all, so that's your scene. And I imagine it happens because you want the face-off.
Yeah, when I was reading the book Erasure, I was very excited for the scene in which Monk would encounter this foil, right? I was so excited when they were going to meet and sort of like have this head-to-head argument, and that never came. And so when I sat down to write the script, I knew that was one of the first scenes that I had to add for my own sort of satisfaction. And it was because I didn't want Centaura to be a villain. I remember there was a huge leap forward in my creative life, and also just sort of like my own life as just being a human being was that I used to be very angry at artists who I felt were getting success off of what I thought was bad work. I would say I don't want to name names, but I would look at somebody and I'd be like, that's stupid. Why is this person allowed to do this? Why is this person, why is this person making like another movie about slavery? What is going on? Why is this happening all the time? And I'm frustrated and they're hacky. And then but the thing that I realized, the sort of like the huge leap forward was for me was understanding that these artists were working within a system and within institutions that had been created generations before they were even alive, right? And so what they're writing toward is what the market is asking of them. And sort of a lot of them it's hard to be an artist. It's hard to make a living writing. It's hard to make a living filmmaking. These are hard jobs. And so people do what they can to be successful commercially because you need to put food on your table and put a roof over your head. And I always and for me, the huge step was realizing that like the question isn't why is this artist making this art that I think is bad or think is beneath them. The better question is why are the people atop all of these institutions, the ones who are sort of like have their hands on the purse strings, who buy movies, who buy novels, why are they so interested in telling the same stories about black people over and over and over and over again? Why are they interested in telling so many stories about slavery all the time? Why are they interested in telling, stories about gang members and inner city violence and drug dealing? Why are they so interested in telling stories about single mothers and sort of like with crack babies? Like, why is that so interesting to these people at such a level that they just keep reproducing this stuff over and over? Why aren't they more interested in telling a breadth of stories about black people? Why are they so interested in telling the sort of like the stories about black people that show the sort of like most trying, difficult times in black people's lives? And that to me was a real sort of awakening for me as a human being and as a creative. And so when I was thinking, I'm sorry, I get long-winded, but the
You're a William and married person.
Yeah. And so when that's in that scene, I felt it was important to give voice to the alternative, to Centaura, because I didn't want her to be a villain.
Yeah.
Because I think that sort of like and I think that it turns the tables on the audience a little bit, because the audience is kind of like starts to believe that Monk is this crusading hero who's like fighting the good fight, and like she's the villain. And then you get there and you realize actually she's very thoughtful. She's considered why she wants to write this kind of book. She's sort of like considered that she understands what Monk is saying, but also disagrees with him, and you realize like, oh, there's like a thoughtfulness here. This person isn't a villain, and I think that is. My friend Milan, I was talking about this last night. There's Occam's razor, right? We've heard of Occam's razor, but there's a lesser known one that I read a couple years ago, and I think about it all the time now, and it's helped my writing, and it's called Hanlon's razor. And Hanlon's razor, does anybody know what Hanlon's razor is? Everybody heard of it?
Tell us.
It is never ascribe to malice what could more accurately be ascribed to ignorance or stupidity.
Huh?
Right? And so, and that's true. It's like the vast majority of people do not wake up in the morning wanting to do bad in the world. The
Right.
vast majority of people wake up in the morning saying like, I'm gonna do right today. I'm gonna do right by people. I'm gonna do the good thing. And they just make poor decisions in an effort, in an attempt to do the right thing. And we sort of like need to remember that. And so to me, there shouldn't be villains in stories, right? Like there should just be human beings, and some human beings make poor decisions. And I wanted to show that these are two people, because I think another thing that really frustrates me about movies and the world sometimes is I think that it's important to remember that there's diversity within diversity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that really frustrated me when I was a TV writer was that that they would go, like I would never have a room full of black people and like invite a white writer in and say like, what's the white experience? You know? Like, can you give me a download? Like, what is the white experience? Because they'd be like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. There is no white experience. We're sort of like individuals and so diverse, and like we live all in different regions and come from different backgrounds. And I think that we need to start thinking about that. Like we need to start thinking that way about the black experience. There is no black experience, right? Like we are individuals with sort of like you can't tell me that Barack Obama's life is the same as a person in the 1940s who was white passing, who was black but nonetheless passed as white, you can't say that my life is like any of their lives, right? Like we are vastly different, and it was frustrating to me when I was coming up as a TV writer for somebody to like have one black person in a room or one gay person in a room and be like, what's the gay experience, you know? What's it like being a black person? Like, and it's like, you can't do that. And so, to me, that scene was also important because it showed that like, blackness is not a monolith.
Yeah.
That these are two black people who actually feel vastly different things about this thing, and because they are different people and they have different backgrounds and different priorities. And so, that is also incredibly important to me. That's my favorite scene in the film too, because it gets at a lot of those things, that there aren't villains, that people do things because they are considered and maybe they just have a different opinion than you. And I also wanted to make Monk look a little foolish too.
So you are so generous with your characters in that way. One of the things I deeply loved about American fiction is that everybody gets an incredibly full aesthetic life. Mm-hmm. They get to like love lots of different kinds of fiction. You know, I'm a media historian, so I watch where books show up in films.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that like interplay of forms and media. And Issa Rae gets Lauren Michelle Jackson. She's holding white Negroes,
Yeah.
right? So you see she's an intellectual. She's really obviously self-reflective about the nature of the art that she's engaged in. Similarly, even though Monk's a jerk in that scene, he's earned his snobbery. Mm-hmm. Like it's earned. Mm-hmm. It's a lifelong process of thinking and engaging aesthetically. Mm-hmm. Coraline gets to have this incredibly wide aesthetic range.
Yeah.
So you are generous with your characters that way.
Thanks. I think you have to. I think that you. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to ask a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about layering them. How you think about that layering work of sort of making them human, giving them a chance to be a jerk, but also show that that is coming from a place of real ownership, of aesthetic drive,
Yeah.
And then Monk gets thrown into the most uncomfortable place when he goes on that tirade and writes the book that he hates, right? So talk about layering characters.
I think that one of the main things you have to be a good artist is you have to really love human beings. Really love them in a way that allows you to see the layers of them. You know, I think that I was very fortunate. My father's right here. My father graduated.
Great to see you. Welcome.
My father graduated from William and Mary Law School in 1972. So this is.
Woo! Class of '72.
But I grew up in an interesting household where my father is a black Republican. My mother, she's passed, she was a white liberal. I grew up sort of like in a household, they got divorced, of course. But they stuck it out for a while. But I grew up in this household where I saw these people with different opinions speak to each other civilly all the time about their different opinions and love each other regardless of their different opinions. And I just saw that there was layers to people, that people, you know, he allowed me to see that not every Republican, we disagree about everything, we don't even talk about, I don't let us talk about politics anymore because it becomes, it's a nightmare, but like he's allowed me to see that not all Republicans are crazy racist, you know? Like it's like I know my father who's a thoughtful man and he's not a crazy racist person, you know? And it allows me to see diversity in those people that I might otherwise. I got to be honest with you. I live in Los Angeles. I don't see many Republicans in my circle. Truly. I don't. It's true. It's true. And so I very, very well easily could have had all these sort of like unfounded opinions about this group of people that I've never talked to before. Mm-hmm. And yet, because of him, I'm able to see from a young age that there are people with differences of opinion who can still be intellectual and thoughtful and smart about things. And so I grew up in this household that was just, nothing was given to me for granted. It was a sort of like every sort of dinner was like a didactic exercise, and sort of like it's no surprise I came to William and Mary. I'll say this. It was just kind of like it was like very rigorous. I'll say every breakfast was very rigorous. And sort of well, it's to say that I think that what it's allowed me to do is, I'll go back to what I was saying before, is that I just really love human beings, and I love us despite all of our faults and flaws, and I think that that's one of the things that I love about art, and I think film specifically, is if the kind of stuff that I like is like an empathy machine, you know, where it really allows you to see, to see people who you might not otherwise engage with, and see the sort of depth to them and see the sort of like layers of their humanity. I think that that's the kind of work that I really love, and that's the work that really speaks to me, and that's the kind of stuff that I want to make. And so I just think that it comes from a place of just like, I really love human beings, and I love our differences, and I love that we're so complex and difficult and trying to do the right thing most of the time and failing and like falling short of that and thinking we're making the right decision, but it's actually the completely wrong decision, but we had all these ideas as to why it was the right decision. Like, that stuff is really compelling to me, and I think that is, you know, it's really just the human condition. And that's what I try to portray. And so when I sit down to write, I just sit down to write people who feel real, and real people are flawed, and but they can also really surprise you and do remarkable things. And I think that that's also, I don't want to watch somebody who's making all the right choices, just like I don't want to watch somebody who's making all the worst choices. That's what I think. That, did anybody see this TV show, The Good Lord Bird? Anybody see that or read the book? No? It's I thought it was amazing. Highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's Ethan Hawke plays John Brown, and it's about the raid on Harper's Ferry. And it's amazing. I love it so much. And it's amazing. One of the reasons I love it is because it's a show that is a lot about slavery. You spend a lot of time with slaves on plantations, and every episode makes you laugh so hard, so hard. And I sort of, when I was sitting there watching it, I was so blown away because I remember thinking like, my God, it's kind of revolutionary to have a show about slavery where you're laughing all the time. Because people, normally when you're watching a film or TV show about slavery, it's incredibly morose and violent and horrific, and it's like just so, it's so void of like any levity. And I understand why people, I understand the instinct to do that. It's because you don't want to seem like you're coming off as glib about this very serious subject. But I also think that what that does is it actually deprives those people of their humanity.
That's right.
Because
Yep.
what you're saying is they couldn't find any way to find joy in their life. They were defined by this bad thing that happened to them. And in fact, that's what's beautiful about human beings, is that we're resilient, and that even in the worst of times, we find ways to fall in love and make music and make art and dance and get married and have children. Like, we find the joy even in the worst of times. And I think that to make a show about slaves, or to make a show about just sort of dark times that does not acknowledge that these people were human and were sort of like still finding ways to be resilient. These were strong people, you know? You have to be a strong person to go through something like that, and to sort of to deny them that sort of like depth of humanity. I always think that it's actually doing a disservice to the people who lived through those things. And so I just never want to make a thing that just doesn't acknowledge like the full breadth of human beings, because I think that people will always surprise you, always. And I think that it's always important to remember that.
I think you've.
You want some more water?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
An empathy machine really sounds like your work. I'm thinking about The Good Place.
Yeah.
And that entire show is about rebooting over and over again the muscles that you need to become empathetic. And it does that at the level of plot, it does that at the level of character. Yeah. Now I see why you wrote it. Now it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and Mike Schur, the guy who created that show, the showrunner, is one of the, he's become like a mentor and a friend of mine, and he is one of the most empathetic human beings that I've ever met.
It really is clear
Yeah.
in the show itself. I want to shift gears and talk about more broadly the trajectory that got you to where you are right now, where you can decide the projects that you want to do, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So what brought you to William and Mary? And then if you were to say to students who are thinking about going in a similar path as a writer or as an artist in some medium, what about that liberal arts preparation do you use?
Yeah.
So how'd you get here and how'd you use it?
I got here because of him.
Yeah. Okay.
I grew up in Arizona, and basically all my friends were going, not all my friends, but many of my friends were going to either Arizona State in Phoenix or University of Arizona in Tucson, where I'm from. And both of those schools would be great, they're great institutions, but I felt like I wanted to get far away from Arizona. And not because it's a terrible place, but when I was 18, I was like, this is a terrible place. I need to leave. But looking back, Arizona is a wonderful place, and those schools, I have so many friends who went to those schools and loved their time there. But it was more about, I knew that if I stayed in Arizona, I would just hang out with the same people that I grew up with. And I wouldn't really sort of like feel like I had a rich experience. I wanted to go somewhere different. I wanted to be around completely different people. I just wanted to be like a fish out of water. You know, I wanted to experience what it was like to go somewhere on my own and be alone. And so coming here, I felt like it was as far as I could get from Arizona, basically. And I have to be honest. I was pretty adrift when I came to college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have anything that I was deeply passionate about at that point. And so I think what the liberal arts education allowed for me was that I always think that I feel bad for people who come to like a liberal arts school and treat it like a white collar trade school, and just sort of like come here and say like, well, I'm going to be a finance guy, so like I don't care. I'm going to like breeze through these other classes that I have to take, and just sort of like, and actually just the only thing that I'm going to pursue really was sort of like any passion is just my eventual job, my career. And like that's fine if that's fine if that's what you want to do, but I think that you're doing a disservice to yourself by doing that. And so what being adrift allowed me to do here was just try a bunch of different things and see what spoke to me. And so, for me it was going down the list. It was like, okay, I don't like econ. Let's scrape that one off. Like I don't like statistics. Like we'll scrape that one off. Like there was all these things that it just allowed me to go through and pick and choose. And then, but when I took the sociology courses my first sociology course, it was the first class that I was really excited about doing the work. I was really excited about doing the reading. I was really excited about having the conversations in class the next day. I liked the philosophy classes too, but I was like, really, what are you going to do with a philosophy degree? I was like,
Little did you know.
I know. I was like, sociology, at least maybe you go to law school, I don't know. But I really liked the reading. I really liked the classes. I really liked the professors. And so I didn't really know what sociology would do for me. I didn't really understand where I would go with that. I remember telling my father that I was majoring in sociology, and he goes, what? What? Yeah. It's like, maybe you should, have you thought about going to the Peace Corps maybe? But what sociology did for me, honestly, that I think like not only is incorporated into all of my work, but in my entire life, and the sort of education that I got here, was that I was from Tucson, and Tucson there's a lot of Latinos in Tucson, but outside of that, there's not much diversity. And the specific sort of like the corner of Tucson that we were in was a suburb on the northwest side called Oro Valley. And Oro Valley especially is sort of like, there's less diversity there, at least when I was growing up. It's wider, more affluent. And so when I came here and started sort of taking all these sociology classes, I was all of a sudden taking like all these women's studies classes, and I was taking criminal justice classes, and I was taking classes about the politics of immigration, and I was confronted with all these ideas that helped me see how I wanted to look at the world. It really gave me my worldview more than anything. It's sort of like, and it allowed me to articulate my ideas about why I think the world is the way that it is, and why I have the values that I have. It allowed me to sort of get a real understanding of the things that would go on to be really important to me. And I think that it helped me sort of, I think that one of the things that I feel like a sensitivity toward injustice, and I think that I got that here. I feel a sensitivity toward, the humanity of everybody, and I think that I got that here. And so sociology just really gave me a platform on which to build what would become the ethos of my life. I really feel like that was foundational here for me.
So if we're thinking about, I know you founded the Susan M. Haas Fellowship, and you've thought a lot about mentoring. When you're talking to young adults who want to go on as makers, I'm imagining that's what they come to you. They say, I want to be in Hollywood, I want to do film, or whatever the next medium will be. Probably immersive 3D.
Yeah, who
right?
knows? Video
Who knows?
games. Yeah.
That's right, VR.
Yeah.
What is your guidance for that? They're thinking about sticking the landing, right?
And that to me is the wrong place to start. I tell everybody, anybody who comes up to me and says, how do I do what you do? What do I do what you do? What do I do to get where you are? I say, here's what you need. I say, envision what success looks like for you. What is the pinnacle of success for you when you sort of like are setting out to do this? Maybe it's winning a certain award, maybe it's earning a certain amount of money, maybe it's sort of like getting a certain actor to star in whatever you're working on, like whatever.
Jeffrey Wright, for sure.
Jeffrey Wright, exactly. But whatever success looks like for you, just really consider that and focus on it. And then the next thing is to imagine that that never happens. Imagine that you will never achieve that. Imagine you never get this movie made. Imagine that you never win that award. Imagine you never make it this kind of money. Do you still want to do the thing? And if you don't, then you shouldn't do it in the first place. You know, like if what you're working toward is this thing off in the distance that like I was watching this you remember the actor Carl Weathers? Carl Weathers? No, he was Apollo Creed. But Carl Weathers, I was watching this interview with him. He passed last year, and I was watching this interview with him, and he said, a lot of people come up to me and say, how do I become an actor? And he says, and I tell them, you know, you go to acting school or acting class, you learn how to act, you can become a working actor, you'll do commercials and yada, yada, yada. And you can become a working actor and live that life. He said, the problem is when most people ask me that, what they're really asking is, how do I become a movie star? And he said, and I have no idea how to become a movie star, right? He's like, I'm not a movie star, but I am a working actor. And so I think that my first job out of William & Mary, I was a communications coordinator at this very small nonprofit in Los Angeles. And I made $25,000 a year, and I hated it. And but every night I would come home and I would write, every night, not for anybody else. I wasn't working on something that I was sending out to people. I would come home and just write documents that stayed on my computer, that I wouldn't show anybody, that I wasn't sending out. It was just what kept me sane. It's what sort of like I needed to do. And so I did it for the love of the game. You need to find value in the creation of the thing.
Yep.
Not the sort of like success that the creation of the thing will bring you. You need to find value in just making stuff. And I think that, you know, it helped me when I started, you know, because I would feel like a failure and I would be struggling and like didn't have any money and nobody was hiring me. And, you know, I would read about, it was important for me to like read about, you know, Kafka, I think, died when he was in his 40s and he was an insurance adjuster. Nobody really read his work. And Vincent van Gogh died penniless and nobody cared about his art. And, you know, Edgar Allan Poe died in a gutter and sort of with no money to his name really. Like all of these people whose work has gone on to be incredibly prosperous and important and influential, like they were doing it because they found value in the creation of the thing. Mm-hmm. They weren't doing it because they were famous. They were doing it because they found value that they had to express themselves in this way, and sort of like that they had to do that. And so I just tell everybody who wants to do this, who endeavors to be an artist, that like, you know, if you don't need to do this, if you just are doing this because you see dollar signs or you see yourself on the cover of magazines, then you're going to be devastated. Your life is going to be miserable because it's going to take a long time to achieve those things. B, those things are probably never going to happen because a lot of this is luck too. I hate when sort of like successful people talk about how they got where they got and they don't acknowledge the fact that luck is a part of it. Right? Like I am lucky. I've worked very, very hard for a very long time, but I'm also incredibly lucky. And it's just like, I'll tell you, the Watchmen, for which I won my Emmy, the way that I got that job was because a friend invited me to a dinner party one night to talk about politics. And I said, okay. And so I went to his house, and the person that I sat next to was Damon Lindelof, who had created Lost and then created this show called Watchmen, and he was sitting next to me at the dinner party, and we just started chatting. And then we hit it off. We found like we sort of like were making each other laugh. And about a month later, he emailed me and said, hey, I'm starting this show called Watchmen. Do you think you'd be interested in coming and talk to me about it, right?
Yeah.
And that came from just being invited to a dinner party one night. Had I not been invited to that dinner party, maybe I never meet Damon, and maybe I never write for Watchmen. So luck is a part of it as well, and I think that that's also important to acknowledge because, you know, life, unfortunately, is not a meritocracy, you know? Hollywood is not a meritocracy, just like life is not a meritocracy, and sort of like, so. all that's to say, find value in the making of the thing. You need to find joy in that and find sort of like some sense of accomplishment in just doing that.
So I love that idea of do it for the love of the game.
Yeah.
Also, accept dinner party invitations.
Yes, exactly.
That's the other lesson.
Exactly.
And since, that is the thing about William and Mary is we love hanging out with other people. So we
Yeah.
have already we're starting out in a strong position.
And I think that something that I didn't do at William and Mary that I was sitting there watching the parade yesterday, and I was like, I should have joined the damn sailing club. Why did I not learn how to sail when I was sitting around with my friends watching Braveheart for the 60th time instead of like learning to sail? Why wasn't I out doing that stuff? And so I think that also something that I've learned to do in my adult life is say yes to
Yes.
stuff.
All
Because
right.
it goes back to what I was saying about like having to be a good artist. But I also think just to be a sort of like fully formed human being, you should have a curiosity about the world.
Say yes.
So when somebody says like, do you want to come to this dinner party with a bunch of strangers? Say yes, go to that. If somebody says, do you want to come on this road trip to this weird place that I'm going and you have time, say yes to that. Say yes to things that sort of will be, give just new experiences and sort of, richer experiences in your life. That to me is also very important. And it's important to remember that in order to make interesting art, you need to be an interesting person and live an interesting life. And
Yep.
you can't just chain yourself to your desk all the time.
So I'm gonna stop being selfish, and I'm gonna let others in the room here ask the questions because this is so fun. I hope you can see how fun it is to draw Cord out. This is what I'd like to do. I'd like to ask so that we can get as many as possible. I'd like to ask you to frame your question in one sentence, and then we'll take 3 questions, and Cord can figure out which one he wants to answer.
Okay.
Okay?
I might answer all 3.
You might answer all 3. But that's fun for the room too, because you hear the multiple dimensions of questions all at once.
Absolutely.
All right, so hands up. We'll bring a microphone around. You have microphones? Yes?
What gives you hope?
What gives you hope?
Okay.
Yes, you have a question here. What gives you hope? Go ahead in the back.
How did Jeffrey Wright become attached to the project?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm so glad you asked that. And right here,
Yes,
my
ma'am.
friend Green Hat.
An exciting time to be a writer
Yes.
because of AI.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I'd like you to comment on that.
Okay.
Also a great question.
Okay. These are great.
All
Okay.
right. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is I'll take them in order. What gives me hope is that I think that is sort of that human beings are resilient. I do think so, and I think that we have a lot of challenges that we're facing right now and in the future, and I think that the worst of us is sometimes highlighted and sort of in news and media because it's sort of like what drives sales and fear obviously is important for the political class at this point and the media class at this point. But I think that there's studies that show like that in disasters that human beings actually help each other more frequently than they take from each other. Yes, certainly there's sort of like people who leverage those disasters for their advantage. But for the most part, we take care of each other in difficult times. And you see that, unfortunately, we're seeing all these hurricanes, we're seeing climate crisis, but you're also seeing the best of humanity in these situations. You're seeing people share, you're seeing people come together as community members, you're seeing people finally find a way to get over their differences in order to support one another. And so I think that is what gives me hope, is I actually think that, again, like most people do not wake up in the morning intending to be bad people. Most people wake up in the morning and intending to do right in the world. And I think that we just need to keep that in our minds. I think that it feels so divided, it feels so polarized in this country. I'm just so ready for us to just look at each other as Americans again and not whatever kind of Americans and our identities. It's just so frustrating. I think that if we can get past this, we can be the most prosperous nation in the history of the world. But that to me is what gives me hope. Is just I think that human beings are resilient and loving and kind, and that even in the worst of situations, most human beings will be good people. I think that is what gives me hope.
We absolutely saw that during pandemic here.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
this
sure.
campus took care of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and that's
It was amazing.
it's beautiful. And then Jeffrey Wright became attached. Jeffrey Wright was I started writing, actually earlier, I started reading the novel Erasure in Jeffrey Wright's voice. That's how early, like when I started picturing the scenes, I started picturing Jeffrey Wright as the character in the book. I just loved his work for so long. I thought he's so amazing and everything. And so he was the first person that I went to. I wrote him an email that when I sent the script, and I said, I have no plan B if you say no to this. So please say yes. And we went out and met for a couple hours one day, and after he'd read the script and chatted. And then we went away, and he said, I want to go read the book and read the script a couple more times. And then he came back about 3 or 4 months later, and we chatted again. He played hard to get for a little bit, but then I think about 5 or 6 months later, he had like officially signed on to the film. And so, and that is, I will forever admire him, because I think that a lot of people pay lip service to the idea of like, we need to highlight marginalized voices, and we need to bring in sort of, different kinds of storytelling. And I say they pay lip service to that because then when the sort of like where the rubber meets the road, what people who say that and then are unwilling to take risks, like in order to bring in marginalized voices, you have to take a risk, because marginalized voices have not been allowed to prove themselves yet. That's the reason they've been marginalized. And so in order to sort of give somebody center stage who's been marginalized, you need to take a risk and hope that they live up to the sort of like the standards that you're setting. And so Jeffrey Wright's in Bond movies, Jeffrey Wright's in Batman movies, Jeffrey Wright's in like every Wes Anderson movie now. He works with the biggest directors in the world, and he works on the biggest projects literally in the world, hundreds of millions of dollars at these movies, right? The budget for my film is probably literally like the catering budget on Batman, you know? Like that's like what they spend on breakfast burritos. And so he didn't have to. I was a guy who had never directed a movie before. I'd never directed anything before. I'd never written a movie before. And the fact that he was willing to take a risk on me and on this film, when he could go do Batman for, I guarantee, a lot more money, it changed my life. It changed my life. And his willingness to, as soon as he joined the project, the financiers were willing to come up with more money. Other actors were far more interested because they're like, oh my God, I get to work with Jeffrey Wright. It just really legitimized the project in a very real way. And so I think that is, you know, a lot of people say that they sort of like want to help marginalized voices, but him committing to that project and trusting me for this thing that was going to take years of our lives to do, I will forever be indebted to him for that. So I love him.
And yeah, AI.
And then AI. I'm a practical realist, I will say, in that AI is here. I don't think it's going anywhere. So I think we need to sort of figure out how to utilize it in the world. I think that I'm not going to be kind of Luddite and say like, well, we should destroy it because it's going to take our job. My question for the people who are doing the AI sort of like development and stuff, my question is, why aren't all the AI programs solving cancer and climate change? Why do you want them to write screenplays? Truly, why are we spending any time getting AI to write screenplays? It's a job that a lot of human beings want to do. It's a job that a lot of human beings are good at. But they're doing it because they want to chisel away at people's jobs. That's why a lot of them are doing this. That's why Netflix and these places are investing in this technology, is because they want to be able to make TV shows cheaper. That is honestly what they're doing. They want to make these things cheaper. And they want to sort of get rid of human beings who are expensive, who get sick, who have families, who you can't boss around all the time, because we have real lives. And they want to get rid of those variables so they can make a cheaper television show. That's truly what it is. And I find that gross. I find it crass. I find it, truly, I think that AI can do wonderful things. But those wonderful things should be solving climate change and solving disease. you know? Well, that's what it all should be. The fact that we're letting it come into these creative industries just so that the people atop these empires can get rid of the annoying human beings who are making this stuff, that to me is really frustrating and I think really dark and grim. And so I think that I just think that we've gotten to a place in the world where it's like efficiency above all, you know? And it's like but I don't think efficiency acknowledges like humanity, and I don't think efficiency acknowledges that it's good to have art made by human beings. It's good for people to have jobs as artists. Art is valuable for the artist. Making art is just as valuable for the artist sometimes as it is for the audience. You know, it is a thing that again, it's like something I came home and did every night because it was valuable for me, because I felt passionately about it and allowed me to sort of express myself. And I think that devaluing that and demeaning that by saying like, well, we're just going to get computers to do it, and because you guys are annoying because you ask for too much money and you got to pay for your kids and pay for college and stuff, like we don't want to deal with that anymore. So we're just going to get a computer to do it. It's frustrating to me, and I think that I just think it diminishes our society. It diminishes our society. I remember. I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a little rant here, but I feel passionate about this. Yeah. I remember when InBev, I was talking, a taxi driver who drove me, who picked me up in Richmond and drove me here, he said that he spent a lot of his time working in the Ball metal factory, and he said we made the Bud Light cans, and would send them or the Budweiser cans, and would send those to the brewery to be filled. And he said that all changed when InBev bought the company. It reminded me of the story that I read this article about, I think it was 2008 at this point that they bought it, but I read this article in the New York Times where they were talking about InBev coming in, this major corporation, to buy Anheuser-Busch and sort of how things were going to change. And they interviewed this guy who his job was putting labels on the bottles. He worked on the line, and he put labels on the bottles. And with that job, he was able to afford not just one house. He bought one house, but then he bought a lake house, and he said put 2 kids through college. And he said it wasn't a good job, it was a great job. It was wonderful. And he knew that InBev was going to come in and get rid of him and get rid of all of these people because they were going to go after efficiency. And they needed to sort of cut costs in order to sort of make more money. And I just, it feels like a dark time to me when we're just forgetting that like work provides dignity, you know? Labor provides dignity, and sort of like these people, that guy deserves to have a home. He deserves to have a lake house if he wants one. He deserves to send his children to college. And the fact that we are actively trying to get rid of those jobs so that we can make more money and have more efficiency, like I think it just diminishes us as a society. I think it really does. And I think that it's important for people to work. It's important for people to labor. It's important and it would be one thing, again, it would be one thing if they were like, we're going to use AI to do all the stuff that people don't want to do, you know, or that's really hard for people. Why are we using AI for things that people are desperate to do? Why are we using AI for things that people really want to, like, there's so many people out there who want to make films. You know, there's so many people out there who want to write novels. And then on top of all that, too, AI really is just a plagiarism machine. AI is fed with all of the ideas of human beings. That's who's giving it all of its ideas. That's how it's learning to write, is by reading and sort of like taking in work that other human beings have created. And so we're teaching it with plagiarism. And so it's just plagiarizing the work of a bunch of artists who aren't getting paid for that, right? These models are learning from all of this stuff from artists who are not being compensated. There's a bunch of lawsuits right now by people saying, like, you're using my novel to train AI in order to put me out of a job, you know? Like, how sick is that, to sort of use these people's own work to hopefully make sure that they can't afford to put food on their tables, you know, in a few years. I think that AI has a place in society. It's not going anywhere, but it's like, please, cure cancer, man. I don't need AI to write a Christopher Nolan movie, you know? That's all.
That was a fun rant.
Thanks.
Thank you. That was. Okay, we're going to go to the lightning round for real. So we just practiced a little bit of a lightning round. I'm going to ask for 3 more one-sentence questions, and I'm going to give Cord 1 sentence to answer.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
That's going to be really hard for me.
No, I'll practice it.
Okay.
I'll practice it with you right now.
Okay.
What's your favorite spot on campus?
The Sunken Gardens.
Yes, well done.
Sunken Gardens.
Best float in the parade?
Philosophy Club.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Philosophy Club.
We can say why in other sentences later. Let's see. Most fun actor to work with?
Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He loved that character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You could
yeah.
tell.
Tons of fun with that character. Okay, so 3 from the room. 1 sentence.
Looking back on your past at William and Mary, besides not learning to sail, do you have another regret?
Not taking my academic career more seriously.
Ooh. Okay, over here.
Sure. What book are you currently reading?
Good question.
I am currently reading a book called The Oppenheimers. That's very, very. Oh, no, I'm sorry, The Oppermans. It's really interesting because this is all a long run-on sentence. It's very interesting because it's about a group of 3 Jewish brothers who were living in Berlin in the 1930s, and so they're deciding what to do as the sort of like rise of the Nazis is happening, and it was written, and that was a comma, and it was written in the 1930s as it was going on. So this writer was writing in real time about what was happening and sort of like about these 3 Jewish brothers deciding what they were going to do. So it is a fascinating book.
Sorry, circle back to the name of it.
The Oppermans.
Oppermans.
Yeah.
Yes. Back here.
I have another book-related question. Knowing that the literature around Black people is, at this time, lopsided, what have you read that corrects that?
That's interesting. I read a lot. I think Percival Everett is a really good primer on sort of, I think he's a wonderful Black author, and his wife, I think that's something that also gets less talked about, is Percival's married to a great novelist named Danzy Senna, who just came out with a book called Colored Television that I would also recommend reading. It's I think that both of them have very sharp insights about race in America that I would recommend. Yeah.
How much more time do we have? 10 minutes. Okay,
Got
we can
plenty
do.
of time.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
3 more. I see you up here. Yep. And right there. Right here. Yep.
As a comedy writer, what's your favorite joke?
Oh my God. That is a hard. What is my favorite joke? That I've written? No. I'm trying to think of what makes me laugh the hard. I can't tell you my favorite joke necessarily, but I will say, I mean, there's so many, but I would say that a real, and this is again from my father, I have a real profound love for Mel Brooks. And so Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, yeah, like those there's a real, I find that stuff really, really funny. But I'm sorry that, damn, I'm gonna think of it. As soon as I walk off the stage, my favorite joke's
No
gonna pop
dad
into my head.
jokes?
I'm
You don't
sorry.
have a dad joke? Why is the 6 afraid of the 7?
7, 8, 9.
Classic. What's brown and sticky? A stick. All right, see? We could do
Those
this all
were
day.
not my favorite jokes. I do know that.
Hi, as a student in the humanities writing, how do I balance what everyone tells me I should be doing and what I actually really want to do, which is write?
I think something that feels weird to say, because I think that when you're in college, I still felt like a kid in many ways, right? But I think that something that's important to remember is your life is yours. You're not a kid anymore. You are maybe sort of like immature in some ways, but you're also, you're at a point now when society says you're an adult, right? And so your life is yours. And so if you want to write, if you feel passionately about that, and somebody's telling you that you shouldn't do that, maybe you ignore them and do what you want to do with your life. I mean, I don't want if your parents are like paying your, that's something to remember, is your parents are paying your tuition, maybe you can't say like, I'm not listening to you. I don't know what your circumstances are, but I would say that to find a way, even in those circumstances, to follow your passion, because I think that is, like, when I say that I was adrift at this school, I really was adrift at this school. I did not apply myself academically, as I said. I was really, I was on academic probation all the time because I didn't apply myself. But there's good news there, is that, like, when I graduated, I felt like a loser, because William & Mary is full of like type A high achievers. And so I had all these friends. I would come back to homecoming, or I would go visit my friends or go to weddings, and my friends were buying houses, and they were driving fancy cars, and they were doctors and lawyers and sort of like high paid consultants. And I would come back and I would be like, I'm like eating beans for dinner, and sort of like I don't have these kinds of things. I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor. And so I would feel really down on myself, because I was around these people who were doing such great things. But I think that the thing that I found eventually was that, like, in my 30s, I found what I'm really passionate about. And so it took me like 10 years to get there. It took me like 11 years before I got into film and television, when I really realized, like, this is what I really want to do with the rest of my life. And so I think that something to also remember is, even if you're in circumstances right now where you don't have the freedom to do what you want to do, that's going to change. And you'll be able to eventually do what you want to do. And so if your passion is writing, then I would say, like, foster that ember, sort of like keep blowing on it. And so that once you're free to do whatever you want to do, then you can really turn that into a fire.
Yeah.
As you were filming the final scene of American Fiction, how sure were you that it was actually going to make the final cut of the movie?
Oh, 100%. Because if that didn't make the final cut of the movie, we would have. I mean, we did not have enough money for that. There is we filmed it. We filmed that at the Harvard Club in Boston. Wait, are you talking about the shooting scene?
When he gets in the car with Sterling K. Brown.
Oh, I was 100% confident that was going to go in the movie, because that was a reshoot. That was not in the original cut of the film. And what we found was that there were people who. The original ending of the movie was the ending when, after the shooting scene, when the guy says, "That's perfect, like, come in here, we got it, we got the ending." Monk just turned straight into the camera, and forgive me, he turned straight in the camera and said, "Fuck." And that was the end, and then the movie went to black. And I liked that ending, but what we found when we did a test screening was that audiences were like, "Oh, so was everything that we've seen there a figment of his imagination? Does he have siblings? Was that all fake? Was that all just for the movie?" And so people felt like maybe intellectually satisfied by that ending, but emotionally unsatisfied, because they were like, well, did he have a family? Did he repair his relationships? And so the very last scene of him walking out onto the lot, that was actually the very last scene we shot for the film, because we had a reshoot day, and so we reshot that in order to let people know that, like, yes, Monk did have a family, he did have siblings, like, all of that stuff that you saw was real, because I think that sort of it was a little too meta, got a little too meta for our own good. Before it was good to have that last final scene to let people, to really sort of like put a bow on the end of it. So I was 100% sure that was going in.
Do we have time for? All right, 3 more. And well done with the one-sentence questions, by the way. We're working a little bit on the 1 sentence answers, but the answers are so interesting. The answers are so interesting, Cord. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Thank you.
My question is, if it's possible, have you ever thought about writing a movie there where actually you have all characters that are William and Mary alums?
Oh, yes.
I have. I've thought about writing about college. I mean, like, writing about not necessarily William and Mary specifically, but writing about the experiences that I had at this school. I don't know if the trademark would allow me to write about.
Oh, let's talk.
Okay. But yeah, I have thought about it because I had such an interesting time here. So yes.
Quickly, was there a moment in your writing career as you were getting started where you were like, oh, I've arrived? Like maybe you saw a joke that you had thought of on screen or something small like that that was like, yes, this is it?
The first time, I also felt like the first time I felt that, the first time I got my first byline in my high school newspaper. I felt like I was friends with all of these musicians in school. All of my best friends were in bands, and like jazz band and punk bands, and they were so creative, and I had friends who were painters, and like I had all these friends who were expressing themselves through art, but I was so insecure at that time that I didn't really have the courage to do that. I felt very nervous. Like the thought of getting on stage and singing a song the way that my friends did so easily was crazy to me. I was like, I don't know how they have the courage to do this. And one of my friends who was a musician, he worked on the high school newspaper, and he said, you should try the paper. It's fun. Just come and see if you like it. And so I became an op-ed columnist for my high school newspaper, and it was the first time that I was like, I can express myself. Like that was really the sort of like start of it. That sort of like started the lifelong journey, was just the joy of that, feeling like I finally found a way to express myself in the way that all my friends were expressing themselves.
I think we have to wrap on that. That's actually really powerful.
Thank you all for coming.
That was the best last word ever. That was the best last word ever. Thank you for wonderful questions and for being here. Cord, thank you for being so generous with your time.
Oh, such an honor.
Yeah,
such an honor to be
I'm
here.
glad that you got to learn yesterday that William and Mary students are still wicked smart. They do their homework. They figure out the judge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're funny.
Truly, really funny. I love it. Thank you all so much for coming.
Yeah, and I have a present for you. Just in honor of the fact that Cord represents us so well in every way, a Year of the Arts t-shirt.
Thank you.
There we go.
I'll wear it with pride.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So much fun.
That was wonderful.